On a cold gray morning, a poor 11-year-old boy was rushing to school. Suddenly, at a dangerous intersection, he noticed an elderly woman with failing eyesight standing frozen at the curb as cars sped past. Without hesitation, he ran into traffic, gently took her trembling hand and guided her across, even though he knew he would be late for school and punished once again. What he didn't know was that this woman was the mother of a billionaire, and that this single act of kindness would quietly change his life forever. Before we continue, tell us what time it is and where you're watching from, subscribe and hype, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The morning air hung heavy with cold mist. 11-year-old Noah shuffled down Oakwood Avenue toward school, his thin frame swimming in a faded blue jacket 2 sizes too big. The zipper stuck halfway up no matter how hard he yanked it. His mother had worked double shifts at the textile factory to buy it 2 winters ago. Now the elbows were worn through, and Noah had patched them himself with duct tape that was starting to peel. The sidewalk was cracked. Puddles reflected the gray sky. Noah stepped around them carefully. His left shoe had a hole in the sole, and his socks were already damp from earlier puddles he hadn't avoided. He was running late. Again. Not by much, maybe 10 minutes, but Mrs. Henderson didn't care about not by much. She cared about late is late. Noah had been up since 6 helping his mother sort laundry before her shift. She worked so hard, every single day, and he tried to help however he could. But it always made him late for school. He quickened his pace. School was 3 more blocks. If he ran, a sharp cry cut through the morning air. Noah's head snapped up. At the corner where Oakwood met 3rd Street, an elderly woman in a pale yellow cardigan stood at the edge of the curb. She was swaying slightly, her white hair loose around her face, one hand clutching a canvas shopping bag while the other reached out into empty space. As Noah watched, she took a step forward directly toward the street, not looking at the cars rushing past. Her foot caught on the curb edge. She stumbled. Noah dropped his backpack and ran. "Ma'am, ma'am. Wait," he reached her just as she pitched forward, about to fall into the path of a delivery truck. Noah grabbed her arm, and pulled her back hard, steadying her against him, as the truck roared past so close he felt the wind from it ruffle his hair. The woman gasped, clutching at Noah's jacket with surprising strength. "Oh my goodness, what just you almost fell into the street, ma'am." Noah's heart hammered against his ribs. His hands were shaking. "Are you okay?" The woman turned toward his voice, and Noah saw her eyes clearly. They were clouded, milky at the edges. She squinted at him like she was trying to see through fog. I thought I was still on the sidewalk. Everything's so blurry." "You're safe now, I've got you." Noah kept his hand on her elbow. She was trembling. So was he. "Were you trying to cross?" "I was trying to get home, but I can't see the cars well enough anymore." Her voice shook. "I've been standing here for I don't know how long. I'm sorry, I must seem so foolish." "You're not foolish, ma'am. This is a really bad corner. Even people who can see good have trouble here." Noah looked at the intersection. Cars rushed past in an endless stream. The light was short, the crosswalk faded. "Would you like me to help you across?" Relief washed over the woman's face. "Would you? Oh, that would be so kind. I'm afraid if I try by myself." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Noah offered his arm the way he'd seen people do in old movies with his grandmother. The woman's hand found his elbow and gripped tight. They waited at the curb. Noah watched the traffic carefully. He counted the rhythm of the light: 20 seconds green, 5 seconds yellow, 40 seconds red. He timed it in his head. Finally, the light changed. "Okay, ma'am, we're going now. There's a dip at the curb, so step down careful." Noah squeezed her arm once, gently, a warning, as they stepped down together. The woman moved slowly, shuffling rather than walking. Noah matched her pace exactly. He kept his eyes on the cars, even though they were stopped. You never knew when someone might run a red light. Halfway across, he squeezed her arm again. "You're doing great, just a little bit more." When they reached the opposite curb, he guided her up carefully. "Step up now. That's it." The woman stopped, breathing hard. She turned toward him, her clouded eyes aimed somewhere past his shoulder. "You saved my life," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "If you hadn't been there, I would have fallen right into traffic. I'm just glad I saw you, ma'am. What's your name, dear? Noah Elliott. Noah Elliott. She smiled, and despite her clouded eyes, her whole face lit up. I'm Eleanor Whitmore. You have a good heart, Noah. A very good heart. Noah felt his cheeks warm. Thank you, ma'am. Do you live nearby? Yes, ma'am. Over on Cedar Street. And you're heading to school? Noah glanced at his watch. 8:47. School started at 8:30. He was already 17 minutes late. Mrs. Henderson was going to make him stand in the corner for sure. But he couldn't just leave this woman here. Ma'am, how far is your house? Just 3 blocks down Oakwood. But I'm afraid, Eleanor's voice wavered. I'm afraid I can't see well enough to get there safely. I might walk into something, or get confused about which house is mine. Noah looked at the school in the distance, then back at Eleanor. Another few minutes wouldn't make his punishment any worse. And she needed help. I'll walk you home, ma'am. Make sure you get there safe. Oh, I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. He managed a small smile. Come on. They walked slowly down Oakwood Avenue. Eleanor held Noah's arm, and counted steps under her breath, clearly trying to orient herself in a world she could no longer see clearly. Noah warned her about obstacles, cracks in the sidewalk, a bicycle lying across the path, a low-hanging branch. You're very patient, Eleanor said. Most young people are in such a hurry. Noah shrugged, then remembered she couldn't see the gesture. My mama says you can't rush kindness. It ruins the point. Your mama sounds wise. She's the best person I know. Eleanor's house was small, with an iron gate hanging slightly crooked, and a garden that had grown wild. Noah helped her up the 3 porch steps, counting them aloud. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you're at your door now, ma'am. Eleanor fumbled with her keys, trying several before finding the right one. Thank you, Noah. You've done more than help an old woman across the street. You've restored my faith that good people still exist in this world. You're welcome, Mrs. Whitmore. You take care now. Noah ran toward school. Actually ran, his backpack bouncing against his spine, his broken shoe flapping, his chest burning. He was 23 minutes late now. Mrs. Henderson was definitely going to punish him. But as he ran, he couldn't stop thinking about what might have happened if he'd walked past. If he'd been too focused on not being late to notice an old woman about to fall into traffic. His mama was right, some things were more important than punctuality. Even if nobody at school would understand that. By the time Noah pushed through the doors of Riverside Elementary, the hallways were empty, silent. His footsteps echoed off the walls as he walked toward Mrs. Henderson's 5th grade classroom. Each step felt heavier than the last. He knocked softly on the door before entering. Mrs. Susan Henderson looked up from her desk. Her expression shifted immediately, from neutral to disappointed to something harder underneath. She was a woman in her late 40s with steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. She'd taught at Riverside for 15 years, and her classroom ran with the efficiency of a military operation. Noah Elliott. Her voice was flat. 23 minutes late. I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson. I know excuses. She stood up, her chair scraped against the floor with a sound that made several students wince. I don't want to hear about the bus or traffic or any other story. 23 minutes means you left your house late. That's disrespectful to me, and to your classmates who managed to arrive on time. Heat crept up Noah's neck. 24 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Ma'am, there was an elderly lady who couldn't see, and she almost fell into traffic. I said no excuses. Mrs. Henderson's voice got sharper. Go stand by the door. But Mrs. Henderson, she would have died if by the door. Now. Noah's jaw clenched. He wanted to keep arguing, wanted to make her understand that he'd just saved someone's life. That being late was worth it if it meant Mrs. Whitmore was alive. But he'd tried explaining before. It never worked. He walked to the corner by the door, past rows of desks. Some kids looked away. Marcus, who sat near the window, smirked at him. Leah Morrison, with her brand new backpack and expensive sneakers, whispered something to the girl next to her, and they both giggled. Noah stared at the wall and tried to hold on to what his mama always said. Kindness is the only wealth nobody can take from you, baby. No matter how poor we are, we can always be rich in kindness." He held on to those words while Mrs. Henderson taught the math lesson. Held on to them while his legs started to ache from standing. Held on to them while his stomach growled, because he'd given his lunch money to his mama for bus fare yesterday and hadn't eaten breakfast. Outside, the morning slowly brightened, and somewhere 3 blocks away, Eleanor Whitmore sat in her small kitchen, safe in her home. Her hand still trembling slightly, as she remembered how close she'd come to dying. Grateful for a thin boy, with a kind heart, who'd been willing to be late to save her life. 3 days later, Noah was walking home from school, when he saw her again. Eleanor Whitmore stood at the exact same corner of Oakwood and 3rd Street. Same pale yellow cardigan, same canvas shopping bag, same uncertain posture as she stood at the curb, clearly unable to judge when it was safe to cross. Noah didn't hesitate. He changed direction, and jogged over. Mrs. Whitmore, her head turned sharply toward his voice, her clouded eyes widened with recognition, or something like it. "Oh, is that Noah? Noah Elliott?" "Yes, ma'am, it's me." Relief flooded her face so completely that Noah felt it in his chest. "Oh, thank goodness. I was hoping. I've been standing here for quite some time, and I just couldn't." She trailed off, embarrassed. "It's okay, ma'am. This corner's really dangerous." Noah offered his arm. "Were you trying to cross?" "Yes, but the cars are so fast, and I can't see them clearly enough." Her hand found his elbow and gripped it gratefully. "I'm so glad you came along." They crossed together. Noah guided her with the same careful attention. Squeeze once stepping down, squeeze once stepping up. When they reached the other side, Eleanor didn't let go of his arm. "Noah, I don't suppose would you mind terribly walking me home? I know you probably have homework, but I get so confused now. Everything looks the same when you can't see it properly." "I don't mind at all, Mrs. Whitmore." They walked slowly down Oakwood Avenue. Eleanor held his arm, and counted steps under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, trying to maintain her mental map of a neighborhood that was slowly disappearing from her vision. "I've lived here 42 years, she said as they walked. "Moved here with my husband when we were newlyweds. We raised our son in that little brick house, but George passed away last year, and now it's just me. I'm sorry about your husband, ma'am." "Thank you, dear." Eleanor's voice was soft. "It's been very lonely. Some days I feel invisible, like the world forgot I exist." Noah understood that feeling better than she knew. "I don't think you're invisible, Mrs. Whitmore. I see you." Eleanor squeezed his arm. "Yes, you do, even though I can barely see you back." She paused. "Can I tell you something? When you grabbed my arm Monday morning, that was the first time in 6 months someone had touched me with kindness. I'd almost forgotten what that felt like." Noah's throat tightened. 6 months without a kind touch, that seemed impossible. But looking at this small house with its overgrown garden and cracked porch steps, maybe it wasn't. "Would you like to come in for some cookies?" Eleanor asked as she fumbled with her keys. "I made oatmeal raisin yesterday. At least I think they're oatmeal raisin. Sometimes I can't tell what I'm measuring anymore." Noah checked his watch. 4:15. His mother wouldn't be home from her shift until 6. "I'd like that, ma'am." Inside, Eleanor's house was small but tidy. Photos covered the mantel, a younger Eleanor with a handsome man, family gatherings, a boy in a graduation gown. The furniture was old but well kept, arranged precisely. Clearly Eleanor had memorized where everything was. In the kitchen, Eleanor moved confidently, counting steps, trailing her fingers along the countertop to orient herself. She found the cookie jar by touch, felt for plates in the cabinet, poured milk from the refrigerator with careful concentration. "Tell me about yourself, Noah," she said as they sat at her small kitchen table. "What grade are you in?" "5th grade, ma'am." "Do you like school?" Noah hesitated. "Sometimes. I like science class. Mr. Peters lets us do experiments, but not all the time. Some of the kids aren't very nice. And my teacher," he stopped. "She's pretty strict." Eleanor reached across the table, her hand searching until it found his. "Is she the one who punishes you for being late?" "How did you? You told me Monday that you had to get to school, but you stayed to help me anyway. I assumed that meant you'd be late, and that you'd be in trouble for it. Eleanor's voice was gentle. Am I right? Noah nodded, then remembered she couldn't see. Yes, ma'am. She made me stand in the corner for the first lesson. Even after you explained. She doesn't let me explain. She says excuses don't matter. Eleanor's hand tightened on his. That's not fair, Noah. That's not fair at all. They talked for almost an hour. About school. About Noah's dreams of maybe becoming a scientist someday. About Eleanor's garden that she could no longer tend. When Noah finally stood to leave, Eleanor walked him to the door. Would you come visit me again? She asked. I don't get many visitors anymore. My son Richard lives in the city, and he's very busy with his business. I'd like to visit, ma'am. Can I come by tomorrow? Eleanor's face lit up. I would love that. The next afternoon, Noah came by again, and the day after that, and the day after that. A pattern formed quickly. After school, Noah would take the long way home past Eleanor's house. Sometimes she'd be on her porch, waiting as if she knew he'd come. Sometimes he'd knock and find her inside, listening to audiobooks on a machine that read text aloud. He'd help her with whatever she needed, reading mail, organizing the pantry, describing what was happening in the neighborhood, who was painting their house, which trees were changing color, whether the sky looked like rain. Sometimes they'd just sit together on her porch, Noah doing homework while Eleanor listened to the sounds of the neighborhood she could no longer see. By the second week, Noah started bringing his homework to do at Eleanor's kitchen table. She'd listen to her audiobooks, pausing occasionally to ask him questions about school. By the third week, Eleanor started calling him her afternoon light. Why do you call me that? Noah asked one Thursday as they sat on her porch watching, or in Eleanor's case, listening to the neighborhood settle into evening. Eleanor smiled. Because that's what you are, sweetheart. When you can't see very well anymore, you learn to recognize light in different forms. Not just what your eyes show you, but what your heart feels. She turned her face toward his voice. Every afternoon, when you arrive, I feel brightness, hope, warmth. Your light, Noah. Real light. Noah felt something expand in his chest. At school he was invisible, or worse, a target. At home he worried constantly about his mother working too hard, about bills they couldn't pay, about his shoes falling apart. But here, with Eleanor, he mattered. Here he was seen. You're my light too, Mrs. Whitmore. Coming here is the best part of my day. Eleanor reached for his hand and squeezed it, once, gently, the way he did when they crossed streets. One Saturday afternoon, Noah mentioned Eleanor to his mother. Denise Elliott was folding laundry in their small living room. Their building didn't have a washer, so she did everything by hand in the bathtub, then hung it to dry. Her hands were red and raw from the work. Mama, can I tell you about someone I met? Of course, baby. What's on your mind? Noah told her about Eleanor, about the near accident at 3rd Street, about the afternoon visits, about how lonely Eleanor seemed, living all alone in that house with her failing eyesight. Denise stopped folding and looked at her son, really looked at him. Baby, that's real kind of you, spending your afternoons helping that poor woman. She's not poor, Mama. She's nice. I like being with her. I didn't mean poor like money. I meant poor like she's suffering. Denise set down the shirt she'd been folding. Noah, would it be okay if I came with you next Saturday? Maybe I could help her with some things too. If she's all alone with bad eyes, she probably needs help with more than you can do. Noah's face brightened. Really, you'd do that? Of course, baby. That's what good people do. They help. So that next Saturday, Denise and Noah walked to Eleanor's house together. Denise brought a casserole, nothing fancy, just chicken and rice, but made with care, and her sewing kit. Eleanor's face when she heard not one but two voices at her door was something Denise would remember for a long time. Noah, and who's this with you? Mrs. Whitmore. This is my mama, Denise Elliott. Mrs. Whitmore, Denise said warmly. Noah's told me so much about you. I wanted to come meet you properly, and bring you something for dinner. Eleanor's clouded eyes filled with tears. You made me dinner. Oh my dear, you didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Noah said you've been very kind to him. Seemed only right to return the kindness. They spent the afternoon together, while Noah helped Eleanor sort through old photos describing each one in detail so she could remember them. Denise tackled tasks that required sight. She mended the torn curtains that had been hanging crooked for months. She organized the medicine cabinet with large print labels Eleanor could feel with her fingers. She deep cleaned the kitchen, scrubbing corners Eleanor couldn't see well enough to know were dirty. "You've raised such a good boy," Eleanor told Denise over tea. "He's been my saving grace these past weeks. I don't know what I would have done without him. He gets his heart from his grandmother," Denise replied. "She used to say kindness is the only wealth nobody can take from you. I've tried to teach him that. You've taught him well." Eleanor reached across the table for Denise's hand. "And you've been kind to come today, to help someone you don't even know." "I know you now," Denise said simply, "and anyone who's kind to my boy is family to me." Before they left, Eleanor squeezed both their hands tightly. "Thank you, both of you. You've made me feel less invisible. That's worth more than you know." Walking home, Noah slipped his hand into his mother's. "See Mama, she's nice, right? She's wonderful, baby. And we're gonna keep helping her every Saturday if she'll have us." And they did. Saturday mornings became their routine. Denise would help with the heavy cleaning, the organizing, the tasks that required good eyesight. Noah would read to Eleanor or describe the world outside her windows. They became something like family, the kind you choose rather than the kind you're born into. Eleanor would tell them stories about her late husband George, about raising Richard in this neighborhood back when it was different. Denise would talk about the challenges of factory work, about raising Noah alone, about the small victories that kept her going. And Noah would sit between the two most important women in his life, feeling loved in a way that had nothing to do with blood or obligation. Just three people who'd found each other, and decided that kindness mattered more than convenience. What Noah didn't know was that Eleanor had started telling someone else about him. Every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock, Eleanor's phone would ring. She'd settle into her favorite chair by the window, the one where afternoon light used to stream through before her eyes failed, and answer with genuine happiness. "Hello, hi Mom, it's Richard." This was their ritual, every Tuesday for 5 years, ever since George had passed away. Richard called faithfully, a small window of connection between his busy life and her quiet one. Richard Whitmore was 47, silver-haired, sharp-featured. He'd built a commercial real estate empire from nothing, working crushing hours and making ruthless decisions. His signature appeared on development deals that reshaped entire neighborhoods. Success had cost him plenty: a failed marriage, a daughter who lived in Boston and barely spoke to him, and time, so much time he'd never get back. He called his mother every Tuesday. He visited her 3 or 4 times a year, usually staying an hour or two before rushing back to the city. He sent her money for groceries which she rarely spent. He'd offered several times to move her to a nicer neighborhood, to hire help, to make her life easier. She always declined. This was her home, George's home. She wasn't leaving. But lately during their Tuesday calls, Eleanor sounded different, happier. There was a lightness in her voice that hadn't been there since George died. "You sound good, Mom," Richard said during their call in mid-October. "Really good." "I am good, sweetheart. It's been a wonderful few weeks." "Oh, what's made them wonderful?" Eleanor's voice brightened even more. "Well, I've made a new friend, actually. A young boy named Noah, such a sweet child. He's been coming by almost every afternoon to help me with things." Richard's hand tightened on his phone. "A boy? What boy? How old is this kid?" "Oh, 11 or 12, I think. He has the kindest voice." Eleanor's happiness was audible. "He helped me cross 3rd Street a few weeks ago. You know how terrible that intersection is, and he's been visiting ever since." Warning bells went off in Richard's head. An 11-year-old kid visiting his elderly, mostly blind mother every day. "Mom, is he asking you for money? Because if someone's taking advantage, Richard." Eleanor's voice carried gentle reproach. "Don't, that boy has never asked for anything. Not once. He helps because he has a good heart. I just worry that I know you worry, but Richard, some people still do kind things for no reason except that it's right. Noah is one of those people." She paused. "He reminds me of you at that age actually. Before the world made you suspicious of everyone." Richard winced. "I'm not suspicious, I'm careful. There's a difference between careful and cynical, dear." They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. But Richard sat in his downtown office afterward, staring at city lights, feeling uneasy. His mother sounded happy, happier than she'd been in years. That should have made him feel good. Instead he felt guilty. When was the last time he'd made his mother that happy? When was the last time he'd spent an afternoon with her, really present, not checking his phone every 5 minutes? When was the last time he'd made her feel less alone? Richard pushed the thought away. He had 3 deals closing this week. A board meeting, site inspections. His business required constant attention. But that night, lying awake in his expensive apartment, he kept thinking about his mother's voice. About the happiness in it when she talked about this boy. This stranger who was apparently doing what Richard himself had failed to do. He made a mental note. Next time he visited, maybe in a month or 2, he'd ask more about this Noah kid. Just to make sure everything was okay. Just to make sure nobody was taking advantage of a lonely old woman who couldn't see well enough to protect herself. November arrived with bitter cold and gray skies. Noah's routine had become steady: school, Eleanor's house, homework at her kitchen table, then home to spend evenings with his mother. It wasn't perfect. Mrs. Henderson still punished him every time he was late, which happened once or twice a week. The other kids still whispered about his clothes, his shoes, his everything. Marcus had started calling him Charity Case, loud enough for others to hear but quiet enough that teachers didn't catch it. But Eleanor's house remained his refuge. A place where he mattered, where he was seen. Until the Wednesday everything fell apart. Noah woke up to find his mother still in bed, which never happened. She was always up before him, already dressed for the day shift she'd recently switched to after years of working nights. "Mama?" Noah pushed open her bedroom door. Denise was curled on her side, her face flushed and damp with sweat. When she tried to speak, her voice came out as a harsh rasp. "Noah baby." Fear shot through him, cold and sharp. He touched her forehead. It was burning hot. "Mama? You're really sick, just tired, have to work." She tried to sit up and immediately fell back, too weak. "No mama, you're staying in bed." Noah's voice was firmer than he'd ever used with her. "I'm staying home to take care of you. Noah, you can't miss school." "I can and I will." He brought her water and the fever medicine from the bathroom cabinet. "You do it for me. Now drink this and rest." He called the factory from the kitchen phone, his hands shaking as he explained his mother was too sick to come in. The supervisor's voice was cold. "She needs a doctor's note if she's out more than 2 days or she's fired." Noah hung up and stared at the phone. A doctor's note meant going to the clinic. The clinic cost money they didn't have. He spent the day bringing his mother water every hour, changing the cold cloth on her forehead when the fever spiked, making her drink the medicine even when she protested weakly. The fever wouldn't break. By evening she was delirious, mumbling about Noah's grandmother who'd been dead for 5 years. "Mama, it's me, I'm here, you're gonna be okay." But Noah wasn't sure she would be. Thursday morning Denise was marginally better, still fevered, still weak, but conscious. "Noah, you have to go to school today. You already missed yesterday. I'm not leaving you like this, baby, please. I can't lose my job and have you falling behind in school." Her voice cracked. "I'll be fine. I promise." Noah didn't believe her, but he also knew she was right about the job. They were already 2 weeks behind on rent. They couldn't survive without her paycheck. So he went to school, but he was 20 minutes late because he'd waited to make sure his mother drank water and took her medicine. Mrs. Henderson didn't even let him open his mouth. "Noah Elliott, Principal Reeves's office. Now." But Mrs. Henderson, now. The principal gave him a lecture about responsibility and priorities, about how education was a privilege, not a right, about how chronic lateness showed a lack of respect for authority. Noah nodded through it all, his mind with his mother. Had she gotten up to use the bathroom and fallen? Had she tried to eat something and couldn't? Had she? "Are you even listening to me, young man?" "Yes, sir." "Sorry, sir." When Noah returned to class, Miss Henderson pointed to the corner without a word. So he stood there, stood through math while his legs ached, stood through English while his stomach cramped with hunger. He'd given his lunch money to his mother for medicine and hadn't eaten breakfast. Stood while his mind spiraled with worry and fear and exhaustion. The whispers were worse than usual. "Why's he always late? My dad says people from Cedar Street are lazy. Look at his shoes. The sole is literally falling off. Charity Case probably slept in." Noah clenched his fists and stared at the wall. These kids had no idea. No idea what it was like to watch your mother burn with fever and not be able to afford a doctor. No idea what it was like to skip meals so she could have medicine. No idea what real life was. At lunch he sat alone in the cafeteria with nothing to eat. Across the room, Leah Morrison laughed with her friends, her tray loaded with hot food. She caught Noah looking and whispered something to her friend. They both laughed. The unfairness of it crashed over Noah like a wave. It wasn't fair that his mother worked so hard and they still couldn't afford medicine. It wasn't fair that he got punished for taking care of her. It wasn't fair that kindness, his kindness, Eleanor's kindness, seemed to make everything harder. His mother always said kindness was wealth nobody could take from you. But sitting alone in that cafeteria, hungry and exhausted and scared, kindness felt like the poorest kind of rich there was. That afternoon, Noah couldn't make himself go to Eleanor's house. How could he sit at her table and pretend everything was fine? How could he drink her tea and smile when his world was falling apart? But by Friday afternoon, after another day of standing in corners and whispered insults, he couldn't stay away anymore. He needed someone who understood, someone who saw him. He found Eleanor on her porch despite the cold, wrapped in a thick shawl. Noah, her face turned toward his footsteps. "Oh Noah, I was so worried. You haven't been by in 2 days. Are you all right? My mama's sick, Mrs. Whitmore, really sick." Eleanor reached for him, her hands searching until they found his shoulders, pulling him close. "Tell me what's happening, sweetheart." And Noah, who'd been trying so hard to be strong, to be the man of the house, to hold everything together, finally broke. The words poured out, about his mother's fever that wouldn't break, about the medicine they couldn't afford, about missing school to take care of her and getting sent to the principal's office, about standing in corners while everyone whispered, about the factory threatening to fire her if she didn't come back with a doctor's note. "And I don't know what to do, Mrs. Whitmore. I'm trying so hard, but it's not enough. It's never enough." His voice cracked. "Everyone at school thinks we're trash. Marcus calls me charity case. Leah laughs at my shoes. Mrs. Henderson won't even let me explain why I'm late. And my mama's so sick and I'm so scared and I don't know how to fix it." Eleanor held him while he cried, her thin arms surprisingly strong, her hand stroking his hair. "Oh my dear boy, you've been carrying all this alone. I didn't want to bother you with our problems. Noah, listen to me." Eleanor pulled back, her clouded eyes aimed somewhere near his face. "You could never bother me. You saved my life. You've been keeping me company, making me feel less alone. You're family to me, and family helps family. But we don't take charity. It's not charity, it's love, it's gratitude." Eleanor's voice was firm. "I'm going to call my son Richard. He's a businessman. He has connections, resources. He can help with your mother's situation, with the school situation, with all of it. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't know if trust me, sweetheart. Please." Eleanor found his hands and squeezed them tight. "Let me help you the way you've been helping me. Let me give you some light back." Noah wanted to argue, wanted to say they could handle it themselves. But he was 11 years old and terrified and so tired. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." That evening Eleanor called her son. "Richard, I need you to come visit, tomorrow morning if possible. Early, maybe 8 o'clock. There's someone I need you to meet, and a situation that requires your help." "Mom, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, dear, but Noah, the boy I've told you about, his family is in serious trouble. His mother is sick, they can't afford medicine, he's being punished at school for trying to help. It's urgent, Richard." Richard heard something in his mother's voice he hadn't heard in years. Real urgency, not "I need groceries" urgency. Real fear. "I'll be there at 8 sharp. Thank you, sweetheart. And Richard, come with an open mind. This boy, he's special. He saved my life, and now we need to save his." After hanging up, Eleanor sat in her favorite chair and thought about the remarkable boy who'd pulled her back from the edge of that curb, who'd given her weeks of companionship and kindness, asking nothing in return. Now it was her turn. Now it was time to fight for him the way he'd fought to keep her safe. Richard Whitmore arrived at his mother's house at 8:20 the next morning, 10 minutes early. He'd spent a restless night, wondering what this situation could be. His mother had sounded worried on the phone, not about herself, but about this boy. This Noah kid who'd apparently become so important to her. He parked his silver Mercedes in the driveway and was about to get out when he saw them. At the corner of Oakwood and 3rd Street, His mother stood with her canvas shopping bag. Next to her, holding her arm with obvious care, was a thin boy in a faded blue jacket. The boy was talking to his mother, gesturing at the traffic, clearly explaining something. Richard sat frozen in his car, watching. The boy waited patiently until there was a safe gap in traffic. Then he said something to Eleanor, and they stepped off the curb together. The boy moved slowly, matching Eleanor's shuffling pace exactly. Richard could see the care in every movement, the way the boy's head swiveled to check for cars even though the light was green. Halfway across the street, the boy squeezed Eleanor's arm, once gently, and Eleanor smiled. Richard's throat tightened. He watched as they reached the other side, as the boy guided Eleanor up over the curb with patient precision. He watched as Eleanor said something that made the boy laugh. He watched as they parted ways with obvious affection. Eleanor toward her house, the boy continuing down Oakwood. And only then did Richard truly see what he'd been missing. His mother's eyes, even from this distance, he could see the cloudiness in them. The way she squinted at nothing, the way her gaze slid past things instead of focusing on them. His mother was nearly blind. How had he not known? How had he visited her month after month and never noticed that her eyes had failed? How had he been so consumed with his own life that he'd missed his own mother going blind? Richard sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, and felt something crack open in his chest. Shame. Deep, burning shame. After several minutes, he got out and walked to Eleanor's door. He could hear voices inside, his mother's and a younger one. He knocked. "Come in, dear." Richard pushed open the door and stopped in his tracks. His mother sat at the kitchen table with the boy from the crosswalk. They were going through Eleanor's mail together, the boy reading each envelope aloud, while Eleanor gave instructions. Bills, advertisements, a letter from an old friend. "Mom," Richard said quietly. Eleanor turned toward his voice, and Richard saw her eyes clearly now. Saw the thick cataracts that had stolen her vision. Saw the milky cloudiness that meant she couldn't see his face at all. "Richard, you're early." "Good." Eleanor smiled. "Noah dear, this is my son Richard." "Richard, this is Noah Elliott, the young man I've told you about." The boy Noah stood up politely and offered his hand. "Nice to meet you, sir." Richard shook it, noting the worn jacket, the shoes held together more by hope than stitching, the thin frame that suggested not enough food. But he also noted the clear direct gaze, the quiet dignity. "Noah," Richard managed. "It's good to meet you." "Noah, would you mind giving us a few minutes?" Eleanor asked gently. "Maybe you could start on your homework in the living room." "Yes, ma'am." Noah gathered his backpack and moved to the other room, though Richard could tell he was close enough to hear if they spoke too loudly. Eleanor gestured for Richard to sit. When he did, she reached across the table and found his hand. "Mom," Richard said, his voice shaking. "Your eyes. How long has it been like this?" Eleanor's expression softened with understanding. "About a year. It's macular degeneration, advanced stage. The doctor says it'll probably get worse." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have worried. You would have dropped everything to fuss over me. You would have insisted again that I move to some sterile facility." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "I didn't want to be a burden to you, sweetheart. You have your business, your own life to live. You're my mother, you could never be a burden. I know that now. But Richard, I need you to understand something." Eleanor's voice grew firmer. "For the past year I've been struggling. Really struggling. I couldn't see well enough to cross streets safely. Couldn't read my mail. Couldn't tell if food had spoiled. I was preparing to give up, to finally agree to leave my home." Richard felt tears burning behind his eyes. "Mom," but then Noah appeared. Eleanor's face transformed, brightening with genuine joy. "That first morning, I was standing at 3rd Street, terrified to cross because I couldn't see the cars. And this boy, this poor late-for-school boy, stopped everything to help me. No hesitation, no expectation of reward. He just helped." She turned toward where Noah sat in the living room, as if she could see him. "And he's been helping me ever since. Every single day, Richard. He stops by after school. He reads my mail. He organizes my home so I can find things by touch. He walks me to the market and back. He sits with me so I don't feel so alone." Eleanor's voice grew emotional. "He gave me my life back, sweetheart. He gave me hope when I was ready to surrender. He made me feel like I still matter." Richard couldn't speak. He looked toward the living room where Noah sat hunched over his homework, trying to pretend he wasn't listening. But that's not why I called you, Eleanor continued. I called you because Noah is being punished at school for helping me. His teacher marks him late, makes him stand in corners, humiliates him in front of his classmates. He's being treated like a troublemaker because he chooses kindness over punctuality. Anger flared hot in Richard's chest. What? His mother works at Franklin Textiles. Long shifts that barely cover rent. They're barely scraping by. Noah helps her before school, then helps me after school. He's 11 years old and carrying burdens most adults couldn't handle. And his teacher, Eleanor's voice hardened in a way Richard rarely heard. His teacher punishes him without ever asking why, without giving him a chance to explain. Eleanor gripped Richard's hand tightly, and now his mother is sick. Pneumonia. She can't work for at least a week, and they can't afford the medicine. Noah has been skipping lunch to save money. He's been terrified to ask for help because he doesn't want to seem like he's been helping me just to get something in return. Richard stood abruptly, pacing. His mind was racing. His mother was nearly blind, had been for a year, and he hadn't noticed. This kid had been taking care of her while Richard was busy making deals and building empires. And now that same kid was suffering because of his kindness. What's the teacher's name? Susan Henderson. At Riverside Elementary. I'm calling the school right now. Richard, wait. Eleanor's voice stopped him. Before you do anything, I need you to understand something. Noah doesn't want charity. He doesn't want anyone to know how much he's struggling. His mother would be mortified if she knew I'd told you all this. Then what do you want me to do? Eleanor stood and moved toward him with remarkable confidence for someone who could barely see. She found his arm and gripped it tightly. I want you to help him the way he helped me. Quietly, thoughtfully, with dignity. Don't storm in like an angry benefactor. Think like the man your father raised you to be. The man who remembers what it's like to struggle. Richard took a shaky breath. His mother was right. He'd grown up not far from this neighborhood. He remembered hand-me-down clothes and teachers who saw poverty before potential. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, let me think. He walked into the living room. Noah looked up from his math homework, anxiety written all over his young face. Noah, can we talk for a minute? The boy nodded, setting down his pencil carefully. Richard sat across from the boy, studying him quietly. My mother tells me you've been helping her. A lot. Yes sir, Noah said. She needed help so you helped, Richard said. Even though it makes you late for school, even though you get punished for it, even though your own mother is sick and you're worried about her. Noah's cheeks flushed. I don't mind the punishment sir. Mrs. Whitmore is worth it. Something cracked open in Richard's chest. Here was a child who had every reason to be angry at the world, poor, exhausted, carrying responsibilities far beyond his age. And yet he chose kindness, even when it cost him. Noah, Richard said slowly, I need to be honest with you. I didn't know my mother's vision had gotten so bad. I was too busy, too wrapped up in my own life to see what was happening right in front of me. His voice faltered. And you were doing what I should have been doing, keeping her safe, keeping her company. He leaned forward. I want to help you, not just because I feel guilty, though I do, but because you deserve better. You deserve fairness at school, and your mother deserves to heal, without worrying about losing her job. Would you be okay if I looked into some things, quietly, without embarrassing you or your mother? Noah hesitated. Sir, we don't need charity. It's not charity, Richard said gently. It's paying back a debt. You took care of the person I love most when I failed to. Let me take care of a few things for you. Fair trade. Noah thought for a long moment, then nodded. Okay sir, if you think it'll help. I do. Richard met his eyes. And thank you. Thank you for seeing my mother when I didn't. After Richard drove Noah to school, on time, for once, he returned to the kitchen, and sat with his mother. Mom, he said quietly, how bad is your vision really? Eleanor sighed. I can't see faces anymore, just shapes and shadows. The doctor says it will keep getting worse. Eventually I'll be completely blind. The words hit Richard like a blow. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid, Eleanor said softly. Afraid you'd insist I leave my home. Afraid I'd become a burden. Your father and I built a life here, Richard. I wasn't ready to give it up. You won't have to, he said immediately. taking her hands. I'll hire help, real help, someone to handle the things Noah shouldn't have to. And I'll be here more. Not once a month, really here. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Richard, I'm sorry, Mom. I let my work blind me. I missed what mattered most. His voice broke. That changes now. They held each other for a long time, both crying quietly. Finally Eleanor wiped her eyes. There's something else. Noah's mother Denise has been coming on weekends to help too. They've been like family to me. Richard nodded. Then I'll help her as well. All of them. Carefully. The way you asked. After Richard left, Eleanor sat alone in her favorite chair, and let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from relief. Her son had finally seen her. Truly seen her. And maybe now, Noah would finally be seen too. Outside, Richard sat in his car staring ahead before starting the engine. Then he pulled out his phone and began making calls. He had a lot of work to do, and for the first time in years it was the kind of work that truly mattered. Richard Whitmore didn't go to his office that day. Instead he drove through the east side of Riverside, slowly, deliberately, seeing it properly for the first time in years. This wasn't the neighborhood he'd grown up in exactly, but it was close enough to stir memories. Cracked sidewalks, faded storefronts, houses held together by routine and resilience. He remembered what it felt like to be poor, to wear second-hand clothes, to feel invisible unless someone made the effort to look. He'd escaped that life through scholarships, relentless work, and a determination that burned like fire in his chest. He'd built an empire, made millions, become someone important, and somewhere along the way he'd forgotten what struggle actually looked like. Noah's face kept surfacing in his mind, that thin frame, that quiet dignity, that steady kindness offered even when it cost him everything. Richard's first stop was Paulson's Market. Frank Paulson, the owner, eyed him with open suspicion. "Help you?" Frank asked. "I'm looking for information about a boy named Noah Elliott," Richard said. "Thin kid, blue jacket." Frank's expression closed instantly. "Why?" "He's been helping my mother. I want to understand his situation." Frank studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Noah comes in a couple times a week, buys cheap food, whatever's on sale. Sometimes shops for your mother too, never steals, never causes trouble. Good kid. And his family, lives on Cedar Street with his mom, works at Franklin Textiles. They're struggling but they're decent people." Frank's voice hardened slightly. "We look out for our own. That boy's had enough hardship without outsiders making noise." "I'm not here to cause trouble," Richard said. "I want to help." "Then help quiet," Frank replied. "They've got pride." At the laundromat, the woman behind the counter, Marie, recognized Denise's name immediately. "She works herself to exhaustion," Marie said. "Never complains, never asks for help, just keeps going." "And Noah?" Marie smiled sadly. "That kid's got an old soul. Helps his mom fold laundry, helps elderly folks carry baskets. Last month some teens were harassing an old man. Noah stepped in, got shoved for it but didn't back down." The last conversation happened on Eleanor Street. Patricia Walsh sat quilting on her porch. "You Eleanor's boy?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," she nodded. "That Noah's a good boy in a hard spot. My granddaughter's in his class. Says his teacher punishes him constantly. Late marks, corners, no questions asked." "Does she know why he's late? Usually helping your mother, or his own?" Patricia shook her head. "That boy tries to do right by everyone, and all he gets is grief. It ain't fair." "No," Richard said quietly. "It's not." That night Richard sat in his home office staring at a legal pad. At the top he'd written Noah Elliott under it. The facts lined up clean and undeniable. 11 years old, 5th grade, lives with mother Denise on Cedar Street. Mother works day shift at Franklin Textiles, helping Eleanor daily for 2 months. Never asks for money or recognition. Frequently late due to helping others, regularly punished by teacher Susan Henderson. Mother recently sick with pneumonia. Family under financial strain, respected by entire neighborhood. Richard leaned back in his chair. This wasn't a problem to be solved with money alone. This was a failure of seeing. And this time he intended to do something about it, carefully, quietly, and the right way. Richard stared at the list. A plan was forming, but it needed care, delicacy. He couldn't just storm in throwing money around. That would humiliate Noah and his mother. It would make all of Noah's help seem transactional. No, this needed to be handled with thought and respect. Richard picked up his phone and called Riverside Elementary. Yes, this is Richard Whitmore. I'd like to schedule a meeting with Principal Reeves and Mrs. Susan Henderson. Tomorrow morning if possible. Yes, it's regarding a student welfare issue and a potential donation to the school. 9 o'clock? Perfect. Thank you. He hung up and looked at his notes again. Tomorrow he'd deal with the school, but there were other things to arrange too. Richard called his assistant. Sarah, I need you to research something for me. Franklin Textiles. I want to know about their day shift supervisor positions, pay range, requirements, any current openings, and be discreet. Of course, Mr. Whitmore. Also, I need the names of the best ophthalmologists in the city who take Medicare, and information about college scholarship programs for students from low-income families. Sarah didn't ask questions, she just said, I'll have everything by morning. After hanging up, Richard sat for a long time, looking at the photograph he'd taken that morning on his phone. Noah guiding Eleanor across 3rd Street, both of them moving with obvious care and trust. This kid had given Eleanor something Richard had failed to give her: time, attention, dignity. Now it was Richard's turn to give something back. Not charity, justice. Time someone saw you properly, kid, Richard said to the empty office. Across town, Noah sat at Eleanor's kitchen table despite the late hour. His mother was finally improving, the antibiotics were working, and she gently sent him off. That poor woman's been worried about you, baby. Go let her know you're all right. So he had. And Eleanor's relief had brought her to tears. Now they sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the November cold. My son is going to help you, Eleanor said, gripping Noah's hand. I told him everything. He's going to make things right. Mrs. Whitmore, we don't need, hush, she said softly. This isn't about need, it's about fairness. You've given me kindness for months. Now let us give some back. She squeezed his hand. You're my afternoon light, Noah. Let me bring a little light into your life too. Noah's throat tightened. Why are you so kind to me? Because you were kind first, Eleanor replied. You saw me when I felt invisible. You treated me like I mattered. Her voice softened. You taught me that real light doesn't come from eyes, it comes from the heart. You have that gift. They sat in quiet comfort, something like family. Inside, Richard called to check on his mother. I like that boy, he said. He's special. I know, Eleanor replied. Now you see it too. After Noah left, Eleanor sat alone, thinking of how close she'd come to giving up, until a thin boy with a broken shoe decided she mattered. Sometimes she thought, kindness really did change everything. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. Richard Whitmore sat in his Mercedes outside Riverside Elementary at 8:45, 15 minutes before the meeting. He hadn't slept much, not because he was angry, anger would have been easy, but because he was disappointed. Disappointed in a system that punished kindness, that saw poverty and assumed failure, that never bothered to ask why before passing judgment. At 9 sharp, Richard walked into the school. The hallways were clean but tired, walls covered in student artwork and posters declaring kindness counts. The slogan felt hollow. Principal William Reeves greeted him eagerly. Mr. Whitmore, thank you for coming. When you mentioned a donation, we'll get to that, Richard said calmly. Is Mrs. Henderson here? In my office. Susan Henderson sat stiffly in the chair, gray hair pulled tight, glasses hanging from a chain. She looked inconvenienced more than concerned. Mrs. Henderson, Richard said, offering his hand. Thank you for meeting with me. She shook it briefly. Of course, though I'm not sure what this is about. It's about one of your students, Noah Elliott. Her expression hardened instantly. If this is about his attendance, it is, Richard said evenly, but not in the way you think. He sat and opened his phone. For 2 months, Noah Elliott, 11 years old, 5th grade, has been marked late 17 times. That's correct, yes, she said. Punctuality is, I'm not finished. Richard's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. For those same 2 months, Noah has been helping my mother, Eleanor Whitmore. She has advanced macular degeneration. She's nearly blind. She was struggling to cross streets, read mail, manage daily tasks. She was preparing to leave her home. He slid his phone across the desk. The photo showed Noah guiding Eleanor across 3rd Street, hand steady on her arm. "That's my mother," Richard said. "And that's a child with holes in his shoes, making sure she doesn't die in traffic. He's done this every day. He's never asked for money, never asked for recognition. He helps because she needs help." Principal Reeves leaned forward, face changing. 3 weeks ago, Richard continued, Noah's mother developed pneumonia. She couldn't work, they couldn't afford medicine. Noah stayed home to care for her, bringing water, managing medication, making sure she didn't collapse. He turned to Mrs. Henderson. The next day, Noah was 15 minutes late because he waited to give his mother her medicine before leaving. "You sent him to the principal, made him stand in the corner. You didn't ask why." Mrs. Henderson's face paled. "I didn't know, you didn't ask," Richard said simply. October 12th, late because he helped an elderly neighbor carry groceries. October 19th, late because he walked his sick mother to the bus stop. November 2nd, late because he helped a man in a wheelchair navigate a broken sidewalk. Richard looked directly at her. Every single time he was late, it was because he was being responsible, kind, human. And every single time you punished him without asking why. The room went silent. Mrs. Henderson's hands shook. "I don't think you're cruel," Richard said more softly. "I think you're overwhelmed, but you made assumptions, based on where he lives, what he wears. You saw a poor kid, and decided he was careless. You never considered he might be carrying burdens most adults couldn't handle." A tear slid down her cheek. Then another. "Do you know what Noah told me when I asked why he keeps helping my mother despite being punished?" Richard asked. "He said, Mrs. Whitmore is worth it." Richard paused. An 11-year-old child decided that another human life was worth humiliation, worth punishment. "That's extraordinary." Mrs. Henderson covered her face and broke down. Richard let the silence sit before continuing. "Noah Elliott is exceptional. He's the kind of student schools claim to value, but routinely fail. That changes today." He straightened. "I'm establishing the Eleanor Whitmore Scholarship for Community Service. It will support students who demonstrate exceptional kindness and service. Noah will be the first recipient." Principal Reeves inhaled sharply. "That's incredibly generous." "I'm not finished," Richard said. "I'm also donating $50,000 to Riverside Elementary for resources and materials." He looked directly at Mrs. Henderson. "But there's a condition." She looked up, eyes red. "From now on, when a student is late, you ask why. You listen. You see them as whole people with complex lives, not attendance marks. You give them the benefit of humanity before judgment." Richard's voice was steady. "Can you do that?" Mrs. Henderson nodded, voice breaking. "Yes, I can. I should have been doing that all along." "Good," Richard said quietly, "because that boy doesn't need punishment. He needs protection." He stood. "And Mrs. Henderson, don't ever let a child like Noah doubt that kindness is worth it. If you do, the loss won't be his." Richard walked out, leaving behind a shaken room and a truth that could no longer be ignored. Outside, the cold air hit his face. For the first time in years, Richard felt certain. This was work that mattered. Mrs. Henderson nodded, her voice breaking when she finally spoke. "Yes, yes, I can do that. I should have been doing it all along." "Good." Richard stood. "I'll have my assistant contact you about the scholarship details and the donation paperwork. In the meantime, I think you owe someone an apology." "I'll speak with Noah today," Mrs. Henderson whispered. "I'll apologize properly." "See that you do." Richard headed for the door, then paused and looked back. "One more thing. That boy is special. He doesn't know it yet, but he is. He has a gift for seeing people, really seeing them in a way most of us never learn. Don't let your assumptions or your pressures or whatever else is happening in your life make him doubt that gift, because if you do, you'll be the one who loses, not him." Then he was gone, leaving Mrs. Henderson sitting in Principal Reeves's office with her head in her hands, finally seeing what she'd been too blind to notice before. After Richard left, Principal Reeves cleared his throat awkwardly. "Susan, are you all right? Should I get you some water?" Mrs. Henderson shook her head. She couldn't speak yet. Her throat was too tight, her chest too full, of shame, regret, and a slow crushing realization of what she'd done. She'd been teaching for 20 years. 20 years of shaping young minds, of telling herself she cared, of believing she was making a difference, and all that time she'd been punishing a child for being kind. She stood on unsteady legs. I need some time. Before I go back to class. Take all the time you need, Reeves said quietly. Susan walked into the empty teacher's lounge and sank into one of the worn chairs. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She replayed the past 3 months with painful clarity. Every time Noah had tried to explain and she'd cut him off. Every time she'd noticed his worn jacket and broken shoes and silently judged his character. Every red mark in the attendance book, tiny accusations that had piled into a wall she'd never questioned. She'd become the kind of teacher she'd sworn she'd never be. One who saw surfaces instead of souls, who punished first and asked questions never, who let pressure turn her into someone hard. She opened her attendance book and flipped to Noah's name. 17 tardies, all in red, failures, every single one of them hers. Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister. "How's your day?" Susan almost laughed. How was her day? She just realized she'd been crushing the spirit of the most remarkable student she might ever teach. A boy who helped blind elderly women cross streets, who cared for his sick mother, who showed up day after day despite being humiliated. She typed back, "Not good, made terrible mistakes I need to fix." She sat there a long time, wrestling with the truth. She could blame the system, too many students, impossible standards, constant pressure. Or she could do what she always told her students to do when they were wrong. Own it, apologize, do better. The second option terrified her, but it was the only one that mattered. Mrs. Henderson didn't return to her classroom until after lunch. When the students filed back in, she called Noah to her desk. He approached slowly, guarded, bracing for another punishment. "Noah," she said, and her voice cracked. She tried again. "Noah, I owe you an apology." The room went still. "I've been unfair to you this semester. Deeply unfair," she continued. "I made assumptions without asking why. I punished you without understanding, and that was wrong." Noah stood frozen. "You deserved better than corners and harsh words," she said, her voice steadier now. "You deserved a teacher who saw you as a whole person. You take care of your sick mother, you help an elderly woman who can barely see, you show kindness even when it costs you. That's extraordinary." Tears slipped down her face, "And instead of recognizing that I punished you, I'm truly sorry. From now on, if you're late or struggling, I promise I'll listen. Can we start over?" Noah nodded, barely audible. "Yes, ma'am." Before he could sit, a hand shot up. Leah Morrison, perfect backpack, polished confidence. "Mrs. Henderson, why are you apologizing to him?" Susan met her gaze. "Because I was wrong. And when we're wrong we apologize. But rules are rules." "Yes," Susan said firmly, "but rules without compassion aren't justice. They're cruelty." She turned to the class. "Noah's late because he takes care of people. And many of you judged him for things you didn't understand. His clothes, where he lives, what he doesn't have." Her voice softened. "Noah has been showing real kindness. Some of you have been showing real cruelty. Think carefully about which you want to be." Silence filled the room. As Noah returned to his seat, Susan noticed what she'd never truly seen before. The way he moved carefully so his broken shoe wouldn't make noise. The way he'd learned to make himself small. And the shame burned all over again. That evening, Susan did something she'd never done in 15 years of teaching. She drove to a student's home. Cedar Street looked nothing like the addresses in her grade book. Cracked sidewalks, peeling paint, kids playing in dirt yards, elderly neighbors sitting outside because their homes offered little comfort. This was Noah's world, and she'd never once considered it. She climbed the stairs to Unit 12 and knocked. Noah opened the door, startled. "Mrs. Henderson." Behind him stood his mother, thin, exhausted, still recovering. "Mrs. Elliott," Susan said softly, "I wanted to apologize. To both of you." Her prepared words vanished. "I treated Noah unfairly, I judged without understanding, and I was wrong." Denise listened quietly. "Noah told me you apologized. I needed to say it to you too," Susan said. "You've raised an incredible son, and instead of honoring that I punished him." After a pause, Denise nodded. "Thank you for coming. That matters." Susan handed her a card. If Noah ever needs understanding, please call me. I mean that. Driving home, Susan thought about all the students she'd never really seen, all the chances she'd missed. Teaching wasn't about attendance marks, it was about people, and a boy she'd once punished had reminded her of that. The next morning, Susan arrived at school 2 hours early. She went to the supply closet and pulled out construction paper, markers, and a wooden frame she'd been saving for some undefined future project. She sat at her desk and carefully created a display. At the top she wrote in her neatest handwriting, "Kindness in action, recognizing students who make our community better." Below that, she printed the photograph Richard had shown them. Noah guiding Eleanor across 3rd Street, his hand steady on her arm, both of them moving with obvious care. She hung the frame on the wall by the classroom door where everyone would see it. And underneath she added one more line, "Noah Elliott, first recipient of the Eleanor Whitmore Scholarship for Community Service." When students arrived that morning, they clustered around the display, whispering, pointing. Some looked impressed, some looked confused. Leah Morrison stood at the back of the group, her expression complicated, shame and something else Susan couldn't quite identify. Noah came in last. He saw the photograph and stopped dead, his face cycling through embarrassment, disbelief, and something that might have been hope. Is that okay?" Susan asked quietly. "That I put it up?" Noah looked at her, then at the photograph, then back at her. "Why would you do this?" "Because it matters. What you do matters. And I want everyone to see that. I want everyone to understand that real character isn't about being on time or having nice things. It's about how you treat people when no one's watching. It's about choosing kindness even when it costs you something." Susan's voice was steady now, certain. "You have that character, Noah. And you deserve to be recognized for it." Noah's eyes filled with tears. He blinked them back quickly, but Susan saw them. "Thank you, ma'am," he whispered. The day was different after that. Word spread through the school about the photograph, about the scholarship, about Noah's story. Teachers Susan had known for years stopped by to look at the display, to ask about Noah, to wonder aloud if they'd been making the same mistakes she had. Principal Reeves visited during Susan's planning period. "That's a powerful statement you've made," he said, gesturing to the display. "It's the truth. Noah deserves recognition for what he's been doing." "I agree." "And Susan," Reeves paused, "what you did yesterday, apologizing in front of the class, visiting his home, that took courage, real courage. It was the least I could do. I have a lot to make up for." "We all do," Reeves said quietly. "But recognizing that is the first step." At lunch, Leah Morrison approached Noah's table where he sat alone with his usual minimal meal, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. She stood there for a long moment, shifting her weight, before speaking. "Can I sit with you?" Noah looked up, surprised. "Ok." Leah sat down. She pulled out her lunch, expensive-looking containers with what looked like homemade pasta and fresh fruit. She stared at it for a moment, then looked at Noah. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for the things I said, the names I called you, the way I treated you. That wasn't okay." Noah didn't say anything at first. Then, "Okay. I made cupcakes last night. My mom helped." Leah pulled out a small container and set it on the table. "They're chocolate. I thought maybe, I don't know. It's not enough, but..." She stood up quickly before Noah could respond, and walked away. Noah opened the container and found 6 perfectly frosted cupcakes arranged in neat rows. Across the cafeteria, Mrs. Henderson watched the exchange and felt something loosen in her chest. Maybe people could change. Maybe it wasn't too late to become the teacher she'd meant to be. Maybe Noah's kindness was contagious after all. Over the next few weeks, Richard Whitmore worked quietly behind the scenes to keep his promise. First, he visited Franklin Textiles. Using his business connections, he arranged a meeting with the plant manager. "I understand you're looking for a new day shift supervisor," Richard said. "We are, yes, but I'm not sure what that has to do with. I'd like to recommend someone. Denise Elliott. She's been on your production line for 7 years. Excellent attendance, no complaints, recently switched to day shift." The manager looked surprised. "Denise is a good worker, but she doesn't have supervisory experience." "Then train her. You're already planning to train whoever you hire." Richard leaned forward. Denise Elliott has been raising a remarkable son while working herself to exhaustion. She's responsible, hard-working, and respected by her co-workers. She deserves a chance to move up, to earn a bit more, to have a slightly easier life. Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate your interest, but we have procedures. I understand procedures. I also understand that I'm prepared to make a substantial donation to your worker training and development program. Richard held the man's gaze. All I'm asking is that you give Denise a fair interview for the position. Not a guarantee, just a fair shot based on her merits. If she's not qualified, fine, but give her the chance to prove herself. The manager studied Richard for a long moment. All right, I'll conduct the interview personally. Thank you. And one more thing, Denise doesn't know I'm involved in this. When you call her, tell her it's because of her work record and a recommendation from her floor supervisor. Don't mention my name. Understood. 2 weeks later, Denise got the call. She came home from work with tears streaming down her face, clutching Noah tight. They offered me the supervisor position, baby. Me, can you believe it? Noah hugged her back, his heart full. I can believe it, Mama. You deserve it. What Denise didn't know, what Noah suspected but never said, was that Richard Whitmore had made it possible, that sometimes angels worked through business connections and quiet donations, that kindness multiplied in unexpected ways. Second, Richard hired a home care nurse for Eleanor. Maria was a patient woman in her 50s who came 3 mornings a week to help with bathing, medication management, and household tasks that had become impossible for Eleanor to manage alone. I don't need this much help, Eleanor protested the first day. Yes you do, Mom, Richard said gently, and I need the peace of mind knowing you're safe. But Eleanor insisted that Noah still visit. Maria helps with what I need, she told Richard, but Noah helps with what I want, his company, his stories, his light. I won't give that up. So Noah continued his afternoon visits, though now the pressure was different. He didn't have to worry about Eleanor falling or running out of food or being unable to read urgent mail. Maria handled those things. Instead, Noah's visits became purely about companionship. They'd sit on Eleanor's porch, Noah doing homework while Eleanor listened to audiobooks. They'd drink tea and talk about school, about life, about dreams and hopes and the future. What do you want to be when you grow up? Eleanor asked one afternoon in December. Noah thought about it. Maybe a doctor, someone who helps people who can't see, like you. Eleanor smiled, her clouded eyes aimed somewhere past his shoulder, but her attention completely present. You'd be wonderful at that. You already have the most important qualification. You know how to really see people. The rest is just learning the technical parts. You think I could really do it? Go to medical school. I know you can. You're brilliant, Noah. Not just kind, truly intelligent. With the scholarship and your grades you could do anything. It was the first time Noah let himself really believe it, that he might escape the cycle of poverty his mother had been trapped in, that he might become someone who mattered, not because of money or status, but because of what he could do for others. Third, Richard restructured his own life. He cut back on business meetings, delegated more to his managers, and started visiting his mother twice a week instead of once a month. What's gotten into you? Eleanor asked during one visit, laughing. I'm going to get spoiled with all this attention. You deserve to be spoiled, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize that. Richard also started building a relationship with Noah. Once a month they'd have lunch together, just the two of them, and Richard would ask about school, about Eleanor, about life. You remind me of myself at your age, Richard told Noah during one of these lunches. Trying to take care of everyone, trying to be strong even when you're scared. It's a heavy burden to carry. Somebody has to carry it. Maybe, but you don't have to carry it alone anymore. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Richard leaned forward. You've got people in your corner now, kid. Me, my mom, your teachers. You don't have to be strong every minute of every day. You can ask for help when you need it. Noah nodded slowly, and Richard could see him processing this new reality. That asking for help wasn't weakness, that accepting support wasn't charity, that sometimes kindness flowed both ways. Meanwhile, at Riverside Elementary, Mrs. Henderson had become a changed teacher. She started each day by reading a quote about empathy or compassion to her class. She asked students about their mornings, really listening to their answers. When someone was late, she asked, "Is everything okay?" before even considering punishment. She also started a kindness recognition program. Each Friday, students could nominate classmates who'd done something helpful or generous that week. The nominations were read aloud during class, and recipients got certificates. The first few weeks nominations were sparse, students unsure if this was real or just another adult trick. But slowly, genuinely, they started noticing each other differently. I nominate Kayla because she helped me with math when I was confused. I nominate James because he shared his lunch with me when I forgot mine. I nominate Noah because he's always kind to everyone. That last nomination came from Leah Morrison. She stood up to read it herself, her voice shaking slightly. I nominate Noah Elliott because he showed me that real character is about how you treat people, not what you own or where you live. He's been kind to me even though I was mean to him. He's been patient with me even though I didn't deserve it. He taught me that you can choose what kind of person you are, every single day, and I want to be the kind of person he is. The class was silent. Noah's face burned with embarrassment, but his eyes were bright. Miss Henderson looked at both of them, at Noah, who'd endured so much with quiet dignity, and at Leah, who'd found the courage to change, and felt a profound hope. Maybe this was what teaching was supposed to be, not filling heads with facts, but helping young people become fully human, helping them see each other clearly, helping them choose kindness even when the world made that hard. By the time Christmas break arrived, Noah's life had transformed in ways he couldn't have imagined 3 months earlier. His mother had settled into her supervisor role and was thriving. The extra income meant they could afford small luxuries, new shoes for Noah, fresh fruit with dinner, the heating bill paid on time. His grades had improved dramatically now that he wasn't constantly exhausted or worried. He'd made the honor roll for the first time. His relationship with Miss Henderson had evolved into something like mutual respect. She treated him fairly, listened when he spoke, and seemed genuinely invested in his success. And his friendship with Eleanor had deepened into something that felt like family. She'd started telling him stories about his grandmother. Turns out they'd known each other years ago, before Eleanor's vision failed. Small world. Your grandmother was a remarkable woman, Eleanor told him one snowy afternoon. She had this saying, do you remember it? Kindness is the only wealth nobody can take from you, Noah recited. That's right. She understood something important, that real wealth isn't about money, it's about how you treat people, how you move through the world. Eleanor reached for Noah's hand. You carry her legacy, sweetheart. You make that saying true every single day. Noah squeezed her hand, once gently, the way he always did. I learned it from her, and from you. And from Mama. Then you've had good teachers. That Christmas Richard gave Eleanor an unexpected gift. He brought Kennedy home from Boston for the holidays. His daughter, now 16, had started returning his calls after he'd changed his priorities. Small steps toward rebuilding what they'd lost. Eleanor was overjoyed to have her granddaughter visit, and Kennedy, meeting Noah for the first time, was immediately charmed. So you're the famous Noah, she said, shaking his hand. Grandma talks about you constantly, her afternoon light. Noah blushed. She's very kind. She's right though, I can tell. Kennedy smiled. Dad says you're special, that you reminded him what matters. Thank you for that. I didn't do anything special. Yes, you did. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That's the most special thing anyone can do. It was a small Christmas by most standards, no expensive gifts, no elaborate meals, but in Eleanor's small living room, surrounded by people who'd chosen to love each other, it felt like the richest celebration Noah had ever experienced. This, he thought, was what his grandmother's saying meant. This feeling of being seen, valued, loved, this was the wealth nobody could take from you. 7 years later, Noah stood in the hallway of Riverside High School, looking at a bulletin board covered in college acceptance letters. His own envelope, thick, official, bearing the seal of Johns Hopkins University, was pinned at the center with a note from his counselor. Congratulations, Noah. First in our school's history to attend Hopkins. 18 years old now, Noah had grown tall and filled out slightly, though he remained lean. His face had lost its childhood softness, settling into features that were earnest and kind. The broken shoes and faded jacket were long gone, replaced by clothes that fit properly, and opportunities that once seemed impossible. But the essential Noah, the boy who stopped to help strangers, who chose kindness over convenience, had never changed. The Eleanor Whitmore Scholarship transformed more than just his life. What began as recognition for one child's quiet goodness grew into a program supporting dozens of students across Riverside. Over time it expanded to include mentorships, summer programs, and partnerships with local colleges, small bridges built for children who might otherwise never see a way forward. Richard Whitmore eventually stepped back from his real estate empire, leaving daily operations to others so he could focus on the foundation full-time. "This matters more than any building I ever put my name on," he told Noah. "Buildings fade, kindness doesn't." Denise Elliott thrived as well. Her promotion at Franklin Textiles opened doors she'd never imagined. She took night classes, earned certifications, and eventually became assistant plant manager. The steady income allowed her and Noah to move into a modest house on the north side, nothing fancy but theirs. 2 years later she remarried. Raymond, a gentle mechanic with kind eyes, treated Noah like a son from the beginning. "Your mama deserves happiness," he told Noah before proposing, "and you deserve a family that sees you." Noah gave his blessing without hesitation. He'd never seen his mother glow the way she did then. Mrs. Henderson's transformation was quieter, but just as profound. She took early retirement from teaching and began working with new educators, using her own failures as lessons. "I punished a child for being kind," she told them plainly. "That mistake is mine to carry, but so is the responsibility to make sure it never happens again." Her book on teacher bias and student compassion became required reading in several programs. Every dollar went to the scholarship. Eleanor Whitmore was 85 now, completely blind, her movements slower but her spirit undimmed. She still lived in her brick house, supported by full-time care and regular visits from Richard and his daughter Kennedy. And she still insisted Noah come by. "Maria handles what I need," Eleanor would say, "but you give me what I want, your stories, your presence, your light." So Noah kept coming. Sometimes they sat on the porch in silence, Noah filling out college applications, while Eleanor listened to the sounds of a neighborhood she knew by heart. "Johns Hopkins," Eleanor said one afternoon. "That's where you're going." "If they accept me," Noah said. "I want to study ophthalmology, help people like you." Eleanor smiled, reaching for his hand. "You've been helping me see for years, sweetheart. Not with my eyes, with my heart." "You taught me that," Noah replied. They sat together, bound by something deeper than circumstance, the simple, rare experience of truly seeing and being seen. The evening before Noah left for college, Eleanor hosted a small dinner, just those who had been there from the beginning. Richard and Kennedy, Denise and Raymond, Mrs. Henderson, and Noah himself. They crowded around the same table where Noah had once sat as an 11-year-old, trying not to cry, feeling visible for the first time. Richard raised his glass, to Noah who reminded us what matters, and to Eleanor, who recognized light when she heard it. "Heard it," Eleanor corrected with a smile. "To love that doesn't need eyes," Kennedy added. They shared stories about 3rd Street, about school, about all the quiet moments that led here. Later Noah and Eleanor sat on the porch steps one last time before college. Cicadas hummed in the warm August air. "Are you scared?" Eleanor asked. "Terrified," Noah admitted. "What if I don't belong?" "You will," she said gently. "You have the kind of intelligence that matters, the kind that sees people clearly." Noah leaned against her shoulder. "I'm going to miss you." "I'm not going anywhere," Eleanor said, tapping his chest. "I'm right here." They sat until darkness settled, until Denise called from inside, until Eleanor's hand grew cool in his, and he squeezed it once, their old signal. The next morning, Noah loaded his modest car, bought with scholarship money and savings from Paulson's Market, and drove toward Baltimore. In the rearview mirror, Eleanor's house grew smaller. Richard stood on the porch with his arm around his mother, both of them waving. Noah drove on, carrying them with him, toward a future shaped not by wealth or status, but by the simple enduring power of kindness. 20 years later, Dr. Noah Elliott stood outside Eleanor Whitmore Elementary School, looking up at the bronze letters above the entrance. The school district had voted to rename it 5 years ago, after years of community advocacy and board discussions. It had seemed fitting. This was where the ripple had started after all. Noah was 38 now, a successful ophthalmologist with his own practice in downtown Riverside. He'd specialized in macular degeneration and retinal diseases, driven by the memory of an elderly woman who couldn't see but had changed his life anyway. He'd restored sight to hundreds of patients over his career, but he always told them the same thing his first patient had told him: real sight isn't about eyes, it's about heart. You helped me see with mine. The Eleanor Whitmore Scholarship had grown beyond anyone's expectations. It now served students across 3 states, supporting not just individual kids, but entire programs focused on service learning and community engagement. Richard had made it his life's work, and even after his death 3 years ago, the foundation continued strong under Kennedy's leadership. Eleanor herself had passed away peacefully at 91, in her sleep, in the brick house she'd refused to leave. Noah had been there the week before, sitting on her porch, holding her hand. "You were my afternoon light," she'd whispered, her voice weak but certain. "You saved me, sweetheart. In every way that matters. You saved me first, Mrs. Whitmore, then we saved each other." That's how light works. It reflects back and forth, getting brighter each time. Now standing outside the school that bore her name, Noah prepared to speak to the current 5th grade class. The teacher, a young woman named Miss Rodriguez, had invited him for their unit on community service. "The kids know your story," she'd said. "You're kind of legendary around here, but I think it would mean something for them to hear it from you." So here he was, walking into the building where he'd once stood in corners and felt invisible. The hallways were different now, renovated with Richard's donation money, bright and welcoming, but the bones were the same. Miss Rodriguez met him at the office. "Dr. Elliott, thank you so much for coming. The kids are so excited. Please call me Noah." "Noah then. Come on, they're waiting in the classroom." 35th graders sat at their desks, vibrating with the particular energy of 10-year-olds who knew something special was happening. Noah looked at their faces and saw himself, a mix of backgrounds, a range of circumstances, each one carrying stories he couldn't know. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Noah Elliott, and I want to tell you a story about what can happen when you choose to be kind, even when the world makes that really, really hard." He told them about that morning on 3rd Street, about being late and knowing he'd be punished but stopping anyway. About Eleanor standing frozen at the curb, unable to see the cars rushing past. About making the choice to help. "I was 11 years old, just like you. I was scared of being late. Scared of getting in trouble, but I was more scared of what might happen to her if I didn't help." He told them about the afternoons at Eleanor's house, about being punished at school, about his mother getting sick and not knowing how they'd survive. "I thought kindness was supposed to make things better, but for a while, it seemed like it only made things worse. I got punished for helping. I stood in corners while other kids whispered about me. I felt invisible." The kids listened with absolute focus. Some of them had tears in their eyes, but then something changed. "Eleanor told her son about me, and her son, Mr. Richard Whitmore, came to this school and asked my teacher a simple question. 'Did you ask why Noah was late before you punished him?'" Noah paused, letting the question sink in, and that question changed everything. Not because Mr. Whitmore was rich or important, but because it reminded everyone that people are complicated, that rules without compassion aren't justice, they're cruelty. That sometimes the kids who seem like problems are actually the ones carrying the biggest burdens. He told them about the scholarship, about Miss Henderson's transformation, about how his life had unfolded from that single moment of choosing kindness. "Now I'm a doctor. I help people see again, at least I help with their eyes. But Eleanor taught me something more important. She taught me that real sight doesn't come from your eyes, it comes from your heart." Noah looked around the classroom, making eye contact with as many students as he could. "Some of you are struggling right now. Some of you are being judged for things you can't control, where you live, what you wear, how much money your family has. Some of you are being kind and getting punished for it." His voice strengthened. "I want you to know something. Keep being kind anyway, even when it's hard, even when no one notices, even when the world punishes you for it. Because kindness creates ripples. You can't always see them right away, but they're there, they're real, and sometimes those ripples change everything. The classroom was utterly silent. The world will try to make you small, Noah said. It will judge you. It will tell you that you don't matter, but you do matter. Every single one of you matters, and the kindness you show, the help you give to people who need it, that matters most of all. He smiled softly. Eleanor called me her afternoon light. She said I made her dark world brighter, but the truth is she was my light. She saw me when everyone else looked past me. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And she taught me that being seen, really seen, with all your flaws and struggles, that's the greatest gift anyone can give. He took a breath. So that's what I'm asking you to do. See each other, not just what's on the surface, but what's underneath. The kid who's always late might be caring for a sick parent. The kid who seems angry might be scared. The quiet kid might be carrying burdens you can't imagine. His voice dropped. Be the light for each other. Be the person who asks why before judging. Be the person who helps even when it costs you something. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Some students were crying. A small girl in the front row raised her hand. Her jacket was too thin for winter, her shoes worn. Yes, Noah said gently. What if being kind just gets you in trouble? She asked. What if nobody notices? Noah walked over and knelt so they were eye to eye. Sometimes being kind does get you in trouble. And lots of times nobody notices, but you'll know. You'll know you did the right thing. And sometimes, just sometimes, that kindness creates ripples that change everything. He squeezed her shoulder. Keep being kind anyway. Afterward, Miss Rodriguez walked him to his car. That was incredible. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Noah said. This school means a lot to me. I know. Your story is part of our curriculum now. Noah looked back at the building, at the bronze letters spelling Eleanor Whitmore's name. She would have loved that. She always said teaching empathy mattered more than anything else. She was right. That evening Noah visited Eleanor's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the winter sun low. The headstone read Eleanor Whitmore 1939-2030. She taught us how to see. Noah sat beside it, not caring about the cold. Hi Mrs. Whitmore, I went to the school today, told the kids about us, about that first morning on 3rd Street. He traced her name. I'm 38 now, hard to believe. Feels like yesterday I was 11, walking you across the street, terrified of being late. The wind moved through bare branches. I've helped a lot of people see again, hundreds. And every time I think about how you couldn't see it all, but somehow saw me clearer than anyone ever had. His voice thickened. Your scholarship is everywhere now. Thousands of kids like me, overlooked, invisible, are getting chances because of you. He sat quietly as the light faded. Richard's gone now too. Kennedy runs the foundation. Your son became the man you always knew he could be. He made sure kindness was rewarded instead of punished. A tear slipped down Noah's cheek. You changed the world, one crossing, one afternoon, one cup of tea at a time. He stood slowly. I miss you. I miss our porch afternoons. I miss knowing someone truly saw me. He touched the stone once more. But you're still here. In every act of kindness, in every patient I help, you're still my afternoon light. On his way back, Noah noticed a boy helping an elderly man across uneven ground, guiding him patiently. Noah stopped. Is that your grandfather? No, sir. Just someone who needed help. That's very kind of you. My teacher says kindness creates ripples. She's right, Noah said, handing him a card. If you ever need help, you call me. The boy's eyes widened. You're Dr. Noah Elliott. From the scholarship. That's me. You helped the blind lady. She helped me first, Noah said softly. Remember that. That night, Noah attended the Eleanor Whitmore Foundation Gala. 43 students received scholarships, each carrying their own story of choosing compassion when it was hard. When the last student finished, Kennedy Whitmore took the stage. 20 years ago, my grandmother was losing her sight, she said, and an 11-year-old boy chose to help her. That single choice created ripples none of us could have imagined. She gestured toward Noah. That boy is now Dr. Noah Elliott. He restores sight. But more importantly, he taught us how to see. She raised her glass. To Eleanor's light, to Eleanor's light. The room echoed.
Noah stood among them thinking of that cold morning on 3rd Street, of a single choice that became a lifetime. Light, he knew now, didn't diminish when shared. It multiplied, and as long as people chose kindness, even when it was hard, Eleanor's light would never fade. It would keep spreading, forever.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.